Sir, what are the lessons that we can learn from recent UK's Conservative Party elections that appointed Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak as the Prime Ministers in the same year?
Sai, very often we talk about our democracy with pride and with justification because we are the first poor country, illiterate country, without any serious experience of democratic management as is understood commonly in the modern era at least, embraced universal franchise on day one. It was an article of faith. It was a great, what shall I say, a great lottery. Our founding fathers took an enormous risk. And it paid off in the sense that we could make universal franchise work. We could see the change of governments peacefully and orderly, even if elections are sometimes chaotic and there are so many malpractices. And basic liberties are they're continuing, constitutional liberties, and the constitutional organs, with some difficulties here and there, they do function reasonably well. In that sense, it's a miracle what we accomplished. But we have forgotten that there's so much more to democracy. Now, Britain, whom we imitated in every sense of the term, what they're doing in terms of changing leadership in an orderly, democratic manner versus what we are failing to do. Somebody is anointed, oftentimes by birth or by some other circumstances. Once there, any challenge to his or her power is seen as dissidence and treason, and they are thrown out summarily, and their political future is completely sealed. That is not democracy. So you see the British leadership over the years, whether it was earlier Cameron, for instance, he became a leader because successive conservative leaders failed to enthuse the people when Labour Party was dominating the country. Cameron, as a young leader, he reached out to his party, reshaped the vision of the party, and he got elected as the leader in opposition, then became Prime Minister. And Cameron, on moral grounds, when he lost or his advocacy lost the Brexit referendum, he resigned. He did not have resigned, but he resigned voluntarily because he felt morally he was obliged because he took a very firm stand on that. Theresa May became Prime Minister after Cameron through the MPs electing her. It was unanimous. Therefore, there was no party election. After Theresa May, again, once she felt she could not carry the parliament with her, then she resigned and Boris Johnson became the leader by virtue of the MPs electing him and the party endorsing it. Johnson had to leave when MPs opposed him, when the majority of MPs seemingly opposed him. Therefore, he left. And then Liz Truss, she was in the top two in the MPs election, in a series of elections. And then the leader was elected by the members of the party. She got the members' mandate. It proved to be an unwise mandate because within 45 days, her policies completely failed and the nation faced tremendous macroeconomic crisis. And therefore, she had to give way to her successor, who was again elected by the MPs. So in each case, in the first past the post system, the members of parliament decide who the leader is. And compare that with India. The moment there is a challenge to the leader in the legislative party, you expel the member. You seal his political future. You deny him or her the opportunity to contest again or to play a political role. So, in effect, the parties have become the private properties of those currently leading. And in many cases, private properties of a family. It's like a private estate, a political fiefdom. Now, you cannot run a genuine democracy with parties being captive in the hands of a few, without democratic alternatives emerging from the members of the legislature, the members of the party, so on and so forth. So Britain showed us a way. That's the way a democracy should be managed. Our greatest failing in our democracy is the parties which are central to running the democracy in our country, in most countries, the parties have become private estates. And you cannot run a good democracy with undemocratic political parties. In terms of membership, anybody must have a right to join a party depending on the ideological affinity without any blessings of the top persons. You should not need them, you need not seek them. In India, that's not the case. Without the blessings, you are not allowed to enter, you are a nobody in any case. 2, a member must be able to rise to any level in the party. That means leadership must be chosen by the members. In India, we simply don't have it. Recently, Congress party made an effort, half-hearted effort, because when somebody who is not entirely seen to be kowtowing the the ruling family in Congress party, they mercilessly got him defeated, publicly sent a signal that Shashi Tharoor is not their preferred candidate, whatever be their words, their actions spoke louder than words. And after the organizational election is over, he is completely marginalized, which is amazing. When within the party you compete for power, somebody gets power, somebody doesn't. But you don't marginalize the person who did not get that power. That is no longer democratic. The winners punish the losers merely because they lost the election. It's no longer democratic. So even the half-hearted effort made in the Congress party, they're not able to carry it through. Many other parties are not in making that much of effort. So we have a long way to go. And the third is allowing the party leaders to emerge as leaders in the public domain. Who become MPs, who become ministers should not be the whims and fancies of some high command. It must be through some form of primary election process, some constituency committee choosing them. And finally, governing in a collective responsibility manner. Not the Prime Minister or the Chief Minister of the state presiding over everything, the rest being ciphers. That's not Westminster model of democracy. There must be collective responsibility of the cabinet. So we have to learn a great deal. Merely using those expressions and having some constitutional mandates are not enough. We must genuinely imbibe the democratic culture. Britain, I think, teaches us that.
Sir, what are the historical events that led to the present situation in our country?
I think what happened was our very success during freedom struggle in the first generation, that became a problem. We had a galaxy of exceptional leaders. I cannot think of another country, with the sole exception to some extent, not fully, of United States. US during the formative years, 1760s and 70s and 80s, they had a galaxy of leaders. Probably we had many more leaders during our freedom struggle in the first generation, but they had some leaders. The number may not be as many as in India, but they had leadership. Otherwise, there is no other parallel. Exceptional leadership from every part of the country, length and breadth of India, all languages, genders, castes, regions, religions. And these were men and women imbued with a sense of idealism, highly westernized in terms of values and exposure, influenced by French Revolution's ideals, very well read, very learned. And the art of liberal democracy was part of their DNA. Because of that, we assumed that's the way it would happen as a culture. Because of moral values and the stature of the people, it will happen as a culture. We did not realize that we have to institutionalize some rules and practices about leadership. I mentioned 4 things. Entry into the party, rise in leadership positions within the party, then choice of candidates, and ability to change the leadership, and party funds, for instance, transparency. So they did not institutionalize the rules. During freedom struggle, all these people sacrificed everything. The question of those people taking advantage of power for pecuniary considerations, for corruption, or taking advantage of party funds did not arise. They assumed, therefore, that's the way it would be forever. Germany, for instance, has a federal law. All these things are not left to the goodwill or the kindness of the leaders. They are actually legally mandated. Because a party is not a private organization. Remember, though it is not government, the moment a party seeks votes from the people, that means I am seeking power over you. And the party seeks to decide how the public money is spent, that means I am controlling your purse. The moment you are trying to exercise control over the people's vote, the mandate and their money, tax money, you cannot be treated as any other private organization. You must be accountable. And therefore, there must have been a law in this country, like in Germany, mandating the parties to behave in a certain manner. You can't dictate to them what policies they should have, but how they should conduct themselves as democratic organizations cannot be left to their sweet will. I think that is the most important lesson that we have to learn.
So what are the specific changes that we can make to improve our internal party democracy?
I can think of 3 immediately. The first is, can we mandate election of the leadership at every level in a transparent process, and election of the candidates, choice of the candidates for elective office on behalf of the party at every level. That is the first thing. That's the minimal thing. The second is, we already have a good funding law. In fact, FDR and Lok Sabha movement have played a creative role in getting that law enacted. But over the years, unfortunately, there have been some distortions because people are very averse to funding in a transparent manner. They are afraid of retribution from their political rivals. And unfortunately, in India, your economic fortunes still are linked to political patronage. So we don't really have a framework of rule of law in real terms. For that reason, they brought in a very unfortunate mechanism, and that is the secret bonds, political bonds, electoral bonds. That's not the right model. Therefore, the second thing is, how do we bring in transparency without fear of retribution for contribution to a political party of your choice? That is the second big element. The third is overall decentralization. Because in India, such a large and diverse federal country, even if you do these two things very well, it's not enough. In a very centralized model, if the aspirations and the talents are not fulfilled of so many members, no, there's so many bright young people who want to play a political role, and that's the way it should be in a democracy. And how can they show their talent? How can they become prominent leaders? How can they actually make a difference in the public domain? If you want to be leader of a major state or a nation, that takes decades for people to know you. Supposing local governments are really powerful, effective, you can transform them in your vision if you get the people's mandate locally. Then a large number of leaders will automatically emerge. They're there, they exist. Their talents will be harnessed. And once people know who they are and what they have accomplished at local level, they can rise. So there is actually a mechanism by which the finest talent can be nurtured in society. So if you do these three things, very quickly we'll find our governance will be changed and the political parties will become democratic and our democracy itself becomes much more healthy.